another episode of Conversations, the show where we talk about the things that if maybe more people were talking about them, we would have a little more space and acceptance and love and many more things in our lives and also in business. And today we're talking about a big topic. This is a very big topic. So, like we like to do on this show, I'm sure we're opening a can of worms. But we're going to learn some things about purpose. And purpose is one of those things that I feel like each of us experiences it a little bit differently. So while there might be a really simple dictionary definition of what purpose is, there's so many individual interpretations of what purpose is. So, as part of this conversation today, I would like for all of you who are listening live or listening on the replay to share with us your definition. What is purpose? What does that mean to you? And we can start to work together to create a joint definition of what this means, but also we're here to learn from an expert in the field of purpose today, the wonderful coach, Pete Heymann. So before we jump too deep into the conversation, Pete, can you give us a little introduction to who you are and why purpose became your thing?
Okay, great. First of all, thank you so much, Tracy. It's so nice to speak with you again and all the millions of people watching. Maybe there's 3
Yes, this is a very popular show.
Who knows? But hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us. Well, purpose for me has been a lifetime journey. There's another word, purpose, journey, a lifetime path and of discovery for me. And I'm kind of living proof that it's never too late to find purpose or to repurpose your life.
Mm-hmm.
Some people find it early in their life, and that's awesome. Some people, it takes a while. It's that kind of thing. Just as you said, it's so individual. It's so, to your experience, to your life experience. I know for me, I was not raised to think in terms of purpose or life purpose. I don't know if it was even a phrase back then. I am 106 years old, so I don't know. But it wasn't in my family, this idea of purpose. It was more transactional. You go to college, which I did. You get a job, get out of the house, support yourself and see where it all leads. So it's more transactional. So it took me a while to really catch up with this idea of purpose. And what I have found for myself is that it was inside me all along. And I never knew it. I never found it. So for me, it was a bit of a journey. For others, not so much. And then they benefit from kind of a head start with purpose. But finding it and living it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And I do think that there's maybe people who were lucky to get aligned with the things that make them feel purposeful earlier on in their lives. I'm thinking about people like doctors, really anybody who's in a service capacity and they're like, yes, this is what I'm meant to do here. I think the intention is the piece, right? Because for me, early on in my career and early on in my life conversations, nobody was having, my family is similar to you, Pete. Nobody was talking about what's your purpose, right? What do you do next? You get good grades in school, then you go to university and you get good grades in university so you can get a job, and then you get promoted and then you do the things and you follow this very linear path. And Pete, I would love to know from your experience, and because you coach in this arena as well, from your clients' experience, have you experienced people finding their purpose on that linear projection, or is it more of a exploratory mosaic type of experience that generally leads people to connect with that purpose?
Well, like you said, everybody's different. Everybody's experiences are different. Everybody comes to this thing called purpose in a different way. Some people, it's spirituality, it's religion, gives them that early kind of purpose in life. Sometimes it's families, parents, or guardians that holds their kids to live a purpose, to develop in a certain way. It may not suit them, but it suits their parents. So it's a little bit of a struggle anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot your question.
I'm just wondering, so like my early part of my journey where I didn't find my purpose, I was following this linear projection of
Right.
society says. And for me, that wasn't where I
Right.
had time or the right surroundings to explore my purpose.
And that can work. And every kid, I'm talking about like developmental years and then maybe into their teens, approaches things a little differently. Not so much thoughtfully, but just some kids, some young people are more open to mentoring, open to ideas, and some are not. Some are more closed. And it has to do, I believe, so much with how we are kind of raised and socialized to be.
Mm.
Are we open to ideas? Are we open to mentoring, to listening to people who might guide us? Or for whatever reason, are we more closed to that? Are we more open to our own feelings? That's what the case was for me.
Mm.
I mean, first of all, I was a boy in the United States of America, raised to be a man. And there's a great metaphor teaching tool called How to Be a Man box. And
Mm.
so I had that going for me or against me, depending on how you look at it, a lot of ways against me, of boxing in things like big boys don't cry,
Cry.
boys will be boys.
Boys.
All those cliches, we kind of box our little
Oh
boys.
man, I have a son, and when I hear people say these things, I'm like, ugh.
Well, that's a great point, Tracy, because it's more that you're a thoughtful parent. I know you are, and you give these things a lot of thought, but it's more than the parent. It's the
Mhm.
society, because that little 4 or 5 year old goes out into the world. Teachers, coaches, you throw like a
Girl.
you run like a girl, all these things that box you
I'm
in
proud of it.
also speaks negatively about girls too. So
Mhm.
we're teaching our boys. So I'm a product of that. Now, by the way, there's a wonderful teaching metaphor, How to Be a Woman box. The difference is, in my opinion, I'd love to talk to you about this sometime, maybe now. Um,
You never know where this show is going to
you
go.
never
That's what
know.
the audience knows.
So little girls are boxed in to grow up to be women, but in different ways. For example, this is my theory. Tell me if you agree. Everybody listening, tell me if you agree or disagree. At least little girls are allowed a fuller expression of emotion. They're
Very
not.
true.
There isn't a phrase. Well, there's a song, "Big Girls Don't Cry," but it's not. It's not the way we raise our little girls. Now, other things box little girls in: smiling, go along with, don't rock
Sit
the
still,
boat.
look pretty.
Yeah, get along, go along. What is it? Go along to get along, or get along to go along, something like that. And then so little girls and women, if they want to break out of that, need to learn their own voice, their own strength, stand up. But at least girls and women have a fuller expression of emotion. And that is healthier. That is more human. So I had that going for me. I was definitely boxed in. But I also had, every family, and you know this from your own experience and now with your own family, raising little ones. Now you're going to tell me your little one's 42 years old, but whatever.
They're still little to you. It's all good.
Exactly. That's true. Um, but it's more than the parent. It's societal. It's how we socialize little boys to be. So I had that going, but I also had the dynamics because every family, in my opinion, tell me if you agree. There's no such thing as no drama in life. Every family has drama. Sometimes there's trauma,
Mhm.
but every family has one or the other or a combination of both affecting parents, kids, the family. Okay. How you respond, how you're guided to respond to that drama or trauma kind of sets you off, right? In terms of how you're going to be in your life. Now, not to go into my drama, I'm happy to, but it might take too long. I had a dynamic going on with an older brother who wasn't born healthy and how my parents dealt with that. Okay.
Mm.
They, not purposefully, I don't blame my parents. They did the best they could, believe me. But the message to me was, Pete, be careful. Don't express yourself. Don't hurt Rick. That's my older brother. And so I grew up thinking my feelings would hurt him. I grew up feeling feelings would kill him. That's how strong it was. I'm not being over dramatic. It's true. That's how it registered with me.
Mhm.
And so I had two things going on. So what did that do? It boxed me in even more, right? So now I've always been into personal growth, counseling, for myself, group therapy, individual counseling. I love all that stuff, right? I always did. And that's a key ingredient to this thing called purpose. Because how do you look within? Sometimes we need to be guided to look within and really see what's there. I certainly did. I ended up, if you ever heard of Landmark Worldwide, it's coaching on a grand scale. I mean, it's not one-to-one coaching. You go through with 140 other people.
Yeah, I think there were 200 people in my forum. Yeah.
Oh, so you know it very well. Okay. And that's where, because I jumped in. I love that whole, Tools for Living and the whole series of programs they offered really helped me tremendously. I knew my story. I could bore you to death with my drama with my brother and all my little league awards that I put in my drawer because I didn't think I could put it up and make him feel bad. Nobody told me that.
Mhm.
I got the message, okay?
Mhm.
Holding things in, holding things in. I knew that story. What I didn't know was what I gave up to navigate that. I knew how I became. I became independent, strong, very careful,
Mhm.
good qualities, right? Nothing wrong with that. But what I gave up was spontaneity, my full expression of my emotion, pretty seriously. Okay. I used to walk around. Now, you know me a little bit now, so maybe this is a surprise. I used to go around literally to anybody who would listen, say, I don't need anyone. Now, I was fortunate. You met my wife earlier when we were setting up. Lois and I go back a million years. Okay. We started very young together. And I had two sons, Isaac and Gabriel. We had two sons, Isaac and Gabriel. I used to go around saying, I have Lois, I have Isaac, I have Gabriel. I don't need anyone else. And I literally lived decades that way, thinking that. But not until I found that jigsaw puzzle piece for me that opened up everything was, oh, no, no, no. From the very get go, I needed connection. I needed people. I needed to express myself. It took me a long time. I don't know how Lois kind of hung in there with me. You have to ask her. But I was really closed off in a lot of ways, And I led my life, but it wasn't as purposeful. Get back to that word, because I found my purpose and still working on my purpose and my vision pretty late in life. It wasn't until I was about 60, 55, 60, somewhere in there. I don't recommend that. Don't wait that long.
But
Because
also, if you're in your 50s, it's not too late.
Well, that's true. It's never too late. It really isn't. I have a client who is in the retirement years, and she came to me as she was going into retirement, wanting it to be fulfilling, purposeful, as much as the rest of her life. She was a very accomplished woman, a nurse for 40 years, the business of healthcare, amazing accomplishment. And she said to me, I want some help in the fourth quarter of my life. She said, she's a football fan. And I said, so we had a consultation talk, which I always do, free, just to answer any questions. And then we started coaching together. And I told her, I just want you to know I'm stealing that phrase. On my website, there's a landing page that says fourth quarter life coaching. Because just to speak to your point, all that is another stage of life that presents challenges, but also opportunities and possibilities. And that's kind of what's behind purpose, isn't it? It really opens up what are the possibilities in your life. So now for me, just to kind of complete my little story, I'm all about connection. I'm all about communication. I'm all about emotion with people. That's now my third chapter of my work life. That's my career, is career and life coaching.
Yeah.
And it's never too late. It's awesome.
Yeah.
To discover it.
It's making me think. So my friend Kira Day runs an organization called the Passion Center, and their definition of passion is meaning times investment. And the definition of purpose is passion shared. And so it's just really cool to listen to your story and hear that you were in this box, right? And there is a very small group of people who are allowed to see that you were allowing yourself to share things with, share meaningful things and time investment. And when we broaden that and we say, hey, emotional literacy is important to me, connection is important to me, and we put that, I mean, this is one of the things that it can be even very beneficial about social media, is that we can show people those parts of us and we can have conversations with other people who are like, yeah, I'm all about that too. And before we jump too far into, there's some other really great definitions of purpose in the chat. So I want to bring those across for everybody. Inger is sharing, purpose is what drives me to do what I do. It's what motivates me. So motivation, another thing that's tied into purpose. And Robert is sharing purpose, a fluid place of motivation that aligns with one's interests, morals, values, and desire to enrich their own lives and the lives they interact with. When it works, oh, it feels so good. And I think this is the interesting thing about purpose. It's not like a thing, right? Like it's not like this highlighter. It's not just a thing I go get from the store. It's those pieces of me, my interests, my morals, my values, my desires, my motivations, and how all of those combine uniquely for me and how I do or don't share those with the world. Inger says, you just mentioned one of her favorite words, connection. Yes, I'm sure we're going to say connection a whole bunch of times today, so stay tuned. But Sam here has an interesting question. Pete, what do you do if you know your purpose, but what if you get blocked by others not allowing you to live your purpose? Is that something you've come across or your clients have?
Wow, that's a great, great comment. Questions. All the definitions were wonderful. I really appreciate it. Gives me a lot to think about. Well, it's it's what coaching or counseling can be about, is to not allow outside forces stop you. There's always going to be when you decide. I'd be interested for your comment about this, and the listeners, the watchers, if they experience this too. If you have set out to change something about yourself in your life, did you ever find that the people that you were close with kind of reacted like, no, 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 you're not a coach, you're a salesman. I mean, what are you doing? Or you're not this, I know you as this. And it almost affects them emotionally that you make a change. Have you found that?
I definitely have. And it's something that I see commonly, and maybe this is part of the journey to purpose. Is, I know for me, when I found my purpose, and for me, I define that as creating more authenticity in the world. And there's literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of ways that could be done. But to me, it's about creating space for more authenticity. Once I knew that about myself, so knowing it is one thing, but then there's also like a dedication to it. Like I will not go through one day without creating space for more authenticity, whether that's in my relationship with my husband or my parents or my son, or here on LinkedIn Live, or in a coaching session, or in a workshop, or wherever. I've done it on the playground at my son's school, because it's something I can do. And there are lots of other places, and there are lots of people who don't want to let me do that. And there are lots of places and lots of people who will allow me to do that. And so there is it's, to me, still speaks to that journey, right? We move through the people, the places who liked us as we were before. I'm sure there's people who liked the VP of marketing version of Tracy better than the authenticity beats everything else version of Tracy. I'm sure there are. If I look back in my professional career, I'm sure I can find them for you. They're probably connected to me on LinkedIn. But that's not me anymore. That's the old version of me. And I think there's also something really important to be said here about not making either party wrong in this. One of the best examples I have of this is when I became a mother, because when I left my corporate work environment, like I literally had Nicholas on what was supposed to be my last day of work. And so I didn't have like shift time. I went from executive to mom. And when I went back to work, I wasn't the same person. Was not the same person. And that's because there's things in my life that made me different. And I didn't want to do those same things. I didn't want to work those hours. I didn't want to wake up and check my phone first thing. I didn't want to do those things anymore. I changed. The company still expected that of me. They didn't change. And it's not that either of those things were wrong. I created that expectation. It's reasonable for them to expect, oh, I'm back. I'm going to be the same, except I'm not the same. And so I'm not wrong. They're not wrong. We're just not aligned anymore. I have friends, my best friend from high school, I haven't seen since the first year of university because we went to different universities. And she's still, in my memory, the most memorable person from high school. It doesn't change the fact that she was my best friend in high school. She will always be my best friend in high school. And I have new friends now that I have different things in common with, and that's okay. So I think there's a important piece from our own internal experience of saying, like, those people are stopping me because they appreciated the old version of me, except I'm not the old version of me. So let me go find new peeps who want to celebrate the new version of me.
You're bringing up something that's really a critical piece to this, and that's choice. We have choices if we're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
I have this thing, I even touch upon it in my book, about free will. Do we have free will?
Mm.
One of the best courses I had in college was this philosophy course, determinism versus free will.
Mm.
One of the few things I remember. Anyway, but we don't really have free will or choices until we free ourselves from some of the constraints that we were given, that we were born to and raised to be,
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of discovery. This thing called purpose is about discovery,
Mm.
and it can be ever changing. I mean, my purpose now is so different than it was earlier in my life, raising my family, working corporate land, working for advertising agencies, marketing agencies, sales. I don't regret any of that in a way, because it is part of my life experience that I tap into now.
Mm.
But it certainly wasn't my purpose in capital letters.
Right.
It was purposeful. It allowed me to make a living and help support our family and all of that. My purpose was my family, definitely, my boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be ever changing. But we have this thing called choice if we open up to it, if we open up to ourselves. There's a fabulous book. I learned so much from my coaching clients. I have a coaching client who's an avid reader. A lot of them are. And we share books. There's a book called The Choice. And it's on the heavy side, but it's not really, because it's very uplifting. Sometimes things are both.
Mm-hmm.
Written by a woman, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. Eva something. She went through the Holocaust, okay,
Mm-hmm.
with her sister as a young teenager. And it's a heavy book about the Holocaust, but it's absolutely inspiring how they survived it. She talks about holding her sister's hand throughout the whole horrible situation and looking out for each other. And she learned a life lesson that she became a psychologist, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And her major message to the world is choice. We always have choice. She even had choices then,
Mm-hmm.
which helped her survive. Even my story, which isn't nowhere near as traumatic or dramatic, it presented issues for me to contend with, and I had choices how to live it. And if I could somehow stay open, and all of us we can learn from these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
From a job that isn't quite working out, well, then shine a light inside. Take a look and see. Maybe it doesn't fit you anymore. And someone, I forget the name of someone who wrote in about that had some real good tips about finding your purpose. I was turned on to a Venn diagram. Maybe people are familiar with it. It's the concentric circles. There's 4 circles. And one is things you love to do, things you do well, things the world needs, and then another important circle, things the world will pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the intersection. If you do this exercise and you see and you list your passions, your interests, all within that, it can help you lead to a purpose
Mm-hmm.
where it overlaps. It's such an interesting way to look at it, I think. And
Yeah, I think Ikigai is the name of the methodology. I'm not sure who shared it. I know there's a lot of peeps on my profile who are proponents of it. But this comes back to Robert's comment too about all kind of the inputs to purpose, right?
right.
Values and interests and morals and desires, what motivates you, community, and all of these types of things are included or not. I don't see it so much as a formula as if they're like contributors along the path. Like, I'm imagining a person like hiking up a mountain and then somebody being like, here's some water. And you're like, oh, thank you. I needed this water right now. And here's this trail mix. Now this has turned into me climbing Mount Fuji, which is a story for another time. But there's like all these contributing factors to purpose. So in your journey, Pete, and in the coaching that you do, what are some things that people can do to tap into those things to start to pay attention?
A great question. These are all great questions.
Oh, and here, Robert found the book. Dr. Edith Eva Eger.
Thank you so much, Robert.
E.
Yes, it's a great read. I listen to books now while I walk.
Mhm.
And it's a great listen. It's a great read. Very inspirational. There are some things to do, and I use some of these tools in my coaching with people, depending on where they are, what they're dealing with, because it's always about the client, what the issues that they want to deal with, and we start there, and then we see where it goes. But a lot of times, I like lists. I'm a list guy, so sometimes I start, and I like starting with or working on the positives of our lives. So it's good to take a personal inventory, not just once, but several times, because we change, right, over time. What are your strengths? What are your skills? What are your capabilities? What are your talents? And what are you passionate about? That's one of the lists I like, kind of the skills list, okay? And really fill it out. Write that list as exhaustively as you can. It's very telling about people because some people I coach, they struggle to come up with 3 things.
Right.
Others, they're filling a notebook. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong, but it just, says something about you that you can learn from. And you look at that list. Then I have another list that I absolutely love, which kind of may make you laugh a little. It's called the lovable list. What makes you lovable? And by lovable, I mean, what makes people want to spend time with you, be in your sphere? That one, some people have a lot of trouble with, but I think it's really important. What do you offer the world in terms of connection, right? Those are really important, I think, to me, it's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
What are the missing pieces that you haven't quite figured out yet? We all have them,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Not you, you know yourself 100%.
No, I don't believe in absolutes.
I knew that. I was just teasing. And you've learned along the way to look at yourself. I know I have. It's all here. Another thing I do sometimes, it depends on the client, of course, but sometimes it's try to get in touch with that little Tracy that's inside you, that little Pete. I know one thing, for probably really good reasons, I am really in touch with little Pete. I always have been. I think it had to do with that confinement of my feelings. I kept him really close. I really like that little guy. I love that little guy. I do. I always have. Some people can't relate to that, but it's good to try. And one exercise to try is, many of us have family albums somewhere, maybe parents' house or in your home. Go through them. Look at them. Observe the pictures, the snapshots along the way. And you'll see, I'll give you one little taste. It's going to, bring chills to me. I remember noticing that with my brother, my older brother, and I have a younger brother too, Don, who, I love dearly. He was the baby boy and different experiences with him. But Rick, it was this, issue with his health and whether he was going to die. It was very heavy stuff. I noticed when looking at the pictures, I always had my hand on him.
Mm.
I was the younger brother, but I always had a hand on his, it's going to make me cry thinking about it. It really does. Um, There's one picture out in the park. I can remember I'm holding onto his shoulder. Always touched him. And to me, that's very revealing. I could really dive into that. And I think that's true of a lot of people. I've used that kind of tool for some of my clients. Just take a look, particularly if you have some trouble getting in touch with that little girl, that little boy that you were. Because that person's inside,
Mhm.
all of us. Did you ever read Tuesdays with Maury?
Yes.
Do you remember? Now, I remember not only reading the book, that was an interview that Ted Koppel, who started 2020 on ABC News, he interviewed this man. He discovered this man in his, I think he was 79 years old, a former teacher at Brandeis, I think, up in Boston. And it was a series of shows. Ted Koppel, who was this stoic, it's not what news people are now. There was no emotion. He just presented the news. He got enamored with Maury and he kept visiting him. And he learned. So there was one little scene in the book and also on the TV show where he's talking to Maury. Oh, by the way, he had ACL, Lou Gehrig's disease, so he was dying. And here's this man sharing his philosophies of life with Ted Koppel. I'm sure it's on YouTube. You should watch it. It's really amazing. Or read the book. But there was one scene in particular I'll never forget. He's talking with Maury, who's remembering an event in his childhood. I think he was 7 or 8 years old with his mother. And his mother, he loved his mother. You could just tell. And he talked about his mother, how his mother had no money, but she got him skates. The skates you clamp on with a skate key, the old-fashioned kind. And he's relaying this story, and he starts to cry on TV with Ted Koppel, stoic Ted Koppel. And you see tears in Ted Koppel's eyes because of what he asked him. He said, Maury, you're 79 years old. Again, I'm going to cry remembering this. You're 79 years old. You've got this terrible disease. You're dying. I mean, he was facing his own death. Why does that bring up such emotion? And he says, because she's right here. I find that so powerful. And that's what's inside all of us if we open up to it and we can learn. Little Tracy could teach you and has taught you a lot, I know. But I know little Pete has, if I allow him to, and everybody. Sorry to get a little, well, how can I be sorry to be emotional when we're talking?
We don't apologize about emotions on this show. No, I think this is so important too, because I think a lot of times when we think about those really personal, deep feelings, emotions about ourselves, and like I don't know, but I'm sure I've cried on this show multiple times. And it's like these are the things where I feel like we can be the most seen, where people can say like, oh my gosh, I feel that, right? Like I experienced that too, and I'm feeling emotional. Or like, I mean, when you're talking about pictures with your brother, I'm like, I wonder about me, pictures with my sisters. Like, was I touching them? Was I trying to stay as far away from them as possible? What was like, now I need to go and look because I am intrigued, but it's, there's so many things that we can learn from each other when we allow ourselves to share. And these are the pieces of us that are attached to our purpose and to things that are meaningful for us. And when we keep them to ourselves, we prevent people from building a relationship with us based on, I think it's just being a lovely human. Like, how touching. This is such a sweet thing. I'm having the same experiences with my grandparents because my grandparents are in their late 80s and they're not going to be with us for much longer. And I'm not going to talk about it because I will cry. But there's like moments, like I do the same thing with my grandma. Like I'm always touching her. Like even if we're sitting like we were at the doctor's office yesterday, just sitting, waiting to get in, and like have my hand on her hand and we're connected. We're not talking because she's mostly deaf. Not like we're not talking on purpose, but like we weren't talking in the moment and it was irrelevant, right? There was a share there. And I think that these are the things from a human experience perspective that allow us to really connect with other humans.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, Pete, I have a question for you about purpose from a business perspective. Now, I feel like sometimes what can get muddled as well is when.
Can I just tell one more thing that I was thinking of?
Yes, please.
I'm feeling a little guilty because I'm not talking about my other brother, Don, who's an amazing man. But he was my little brother, young kid. And I didn't appreciate him enough when we were growing up, all for a lot of the reasons I'm talking about, me being boxed in and everything. And it wasn't until young adulthood, I came out to California. I made my pilgrimage to San Francisco. And I was with a friend that I knew in college, and his younger brother, about 21, 22, came out to visit. And I found myself literally falling in love with this young guy. I mean, I just loved spending time with him. And then it dawned on me, oh my goodness, I've had that all along with Don. I called him up. I probably freaked him out. And I said, Don, and I told him the story. And we have, developed a much closer relationship since then. But it took learning that outside my immediate sphere, So we always have to be open to what presents, and
Mhm.
and what it can do to open ourselves up, Anyhow, I just
Yeah.
want to give Don
Yeah.
his due.
Well, and you never know where you're going to learn things. Before you answer my question, I just want to pull up what Robert is sharing here. The beauty about emotions is that they convey how much we care about things, usually people, and their connection to our authentic self. This is us revealing our authentic self. Part of the purpose journey. Nicely put,
Absolutely.
Robert.
I have another book too, by the way.
Go for it.
Susan Cain is an author who wrote 2 books actually that I know of. Quiet, which is about the continuum of introspection and not
Introversion.
introversion and extroversion. Thank you very much.
Got you.
And we value extroverts in our society, all that. But what about the introverts where would we be without researchers, scientists, poets, but we value the football captain and the cheerleader captain but she also wrote another book called Bittersweet, and it speaks exactly to what we were just talking about. And the bittersweet of life, she said, is sadness. Sadness we run from. Like I was running from it, and yet, if we can embrace our sadness, that's what connects us.
Mm.
Because we all experience sadness if we allow ourselves to. We don't allow it,
Mm-hmm.
but if we do, wow, we can come together. You and I, just even across the,
The
online,
internets.
we connected through that. I know we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now your question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just because I feel like when we're talking about discovering purpose, lots of people end up exploring how that might be a business opportunity. So,
Sure.
what are the challenges that you've seen people experience in this? Okay, now I found my purpose, but I tried to make it a business, and now it feels like, eh.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in there to kind of unpack, and everybody's story is a little different. Whether they created their own business, whether they're working corporately or in an organization, not for profit, in a structure. If we don't enter that through this thing called purpose, passion, interest, strong interest, what's in our heart, we're not going to be fully realized. We're not going to be fully fulfilled, I think, right? And we might, and then we may discover our purpose whilst in an organization. Then what do you do? Or do I take that and start something anew? And everybody's different. And you can find your purpose, I believe, within working for an organization, particularly if it's a big organization. You can find a path that better suits you. If you were like in that sales line of development, you realize, well, my purpose is, yeah, sales, but I really like helping solve people's issues. So maybe it's more on the marketing side or the strategic side. So you can adjust. You don't have to shift. You don't have to make a total change.
Right.
I have a corporate client. He came to me with the issue of he wasn't getting the promotions he wanted. And so we started, I work wherever my clients are. And then it develops from there or not. They get what they want or it uncovers something else. Because, our lives are so interconnected. How do you separate that from self-esteem, et cetera? So then he really began to look into it. What turns him on about corporate life? He didn't want to run from it. Fantastic project manager and people manager.
Mm.
Nice combination, right? Because you can be a great project manager and not be so great at communicating and managing people. So he started to really develop those skills and became an unbelievable manager of people. And so he developed along those lines. So you see, you can discover things about yourself, develop them, and stay or leave. Again, there's the word choice. You have choices. Sometimes we don't feel like it, like as if we do, but we really do. It's really all up to us.
Yeah.
And it's all part of taking a look, under the hood in your heart and ask those questions. It could be scary in the beginning, but it's really not. It's a discovery.
Yeah.
Didn't you discover yourself when you realize what really turns you on and, makes you light up with that wonderful smile of yours and, engage and communicate with people? That was a discovery, right?
Yeah. And we've said this a lot of times, it's an ongoing discovery. And I think that I see this happen a lot in business creation too, though, is we feel like there's one choice, right? Like, I'm going to build a business, so it has to be like this. And so we start to build that way. And then we're like, oh, this doesn't feel good anymore. It doesn't feel like I'm living my purpose. And I think societally, and partially I blame marketing for this, because companies do a really good job marketing themselves as the answer to your problem. But our purpose and our passion and our values and all of these things that we've talked about, our morals, these are things upon which we should build our business. And I have different ones than Pete and Robert and Sam and Madeline. We all have different inputs, probably not substantially different inputs because we're all here listening to the show, but humans in general, we'll all have different inputs, and we can build things based on that. We can build a career based on that. We can build a business based on that. Hey, we can even get to the point where we are now a business owner and we're employing lots of other people, and we can show if purpose is important to you and you want employees on your team who are being purposeful, ask them that in an interview, right? Like, there's lots of things that we can do if we kind of go back to our own personal brand foundations and say, this is what's important to me. I refuse to. This was a problem I had in my career, was that like all of the things that are being done here are not things I would choose. They're not that they're like bad things, but they're just not the things I would choose, because I have different goals. I have different intentions as a human. And so if we can get aligned with people who have similar goals and intentions, and we can build something that we all care about building, then there's a different path to be followed than somebody's prescribed way to build a business. So we've used the words journey, exploration, discovery quite a bit today. And I think this is really the central concept, right? Is that we need to give ourselves the space and the time to go through this discovery and to learn things about ourselves that we want to let go, and to learn new things about ourselves that are more exciting, and continue to go on the journey. So to wrap up today, Pete, what are some things that you do or you've seen your clients successfully do? Because this is a journey and we don't really get to a destination per se, what are some things that make it a little easier to keep going?
Well, one thing I kind of borrow a lot or steal a lot from other ways of looking at things, but from Buddhism, meditation, there's another phrase I'll throw out there, or another word: practice. It's all a practice. If you're going to take on the task of changing or taking a look at yourself, analyzing yourself, figuring it out, checking in your heart and see what you want to do, chances are there's going to be a practice of undoing the ways you looked at it before. And it's a practice, and just stay with it. Like, the negative thinking, the scarcity thinking. We all have it, in a different way. Pema Chodron, Buddhist teacher for decades, is just brilliant, I think. She has a way of talking about Shempas, she calls them, and catching that negative thinking. And she said you need to literally grab it, take a look at it, kind of laugh at yourself, like, "Oops, I'm doing it again." And then here goes again the word choice. You have a choice. What am I going to do with the fact that I'm, you know, limited thinking? I don't feel I'm enough, or have the disease to please, whatever it is, and you catch yourself. You can discard it and try another way, and then don't beat yourself up, because it is practice. It's just like any other. If you look at the sports metaphor, it's like learning, a golf swing or a tennis swing, or how to catch a ground ball the proper way. It's a practice. It's like muscle memory.
Mhm.
So that's a good way to look at this thing, called changing, personal growth.
Yeah, I
You
was
could
going
be,
to say growing.
yeah, yeah.
I love a good sports metaphor as well. And it makes me think about, so I played competitive basketball, and it makes me think about how much time I spent standing at the free throw line shooting free throws. Right? You shoot them and you shoot them and you shoot them, so that when you have to shoot them in the game, you don't have to think about it. Your body just does it. And you do that so that you have the practice, so that you can do it. And I think a lot of times when we think about things like being authentic, living our values, being purposeful, and these types of things, we think we should just know how to do it. We should just know, because that's part of who we are. But we didn't practice it, right?
Exactly.
Like, I can still shoot a really good free throw because I did all of that practice. And even though I haven't shot one now for like 3 years, I can still hit a very high percentage of them. And that's
Wow.
because we did the practice. But we also have to decide to do the practice. Andrew is sharing, you're in control of the things you want to do. Do you want to practice? Do you want to practice being purposeful? Do you want to practice letting go of things? This is another thing that people think, again, you should just be able to do. But letting go of things that have been a part of you for 20, 30, 40, 50 years is not a thing that just happens. We have to practice.
I had a counselor once who, I forget how it came up, but I was one of the world's great procrastinators. I had a whole theory, why do today what you can put off till tomorrow and maybe not have to do it all. I really majored in it, okay? And so when that came up in counseling, she said, "Would you like to change that?" And then she had me do something. This is answer your question about what things you can do. What she had me do, and I still do it. This is probably 20 years later. She said, "Pick something in your life you'd like to change about going about your day." And it's just very personal to me. I don't like walking past a kitchen sink with dirty dishes in it. I just don't like it. Now that didn't mean I'd stop and do anything. I would just grumble like, "Lois, why didn't you do that? Gabriel, Isaac, why didn't you?" And I complain about everybody else. She says, "Okay, that's something measurable, something you can do." So every single day, and literally throughout the day, I practice clearing the kitchen sink. Now, it makes me very popular at home because nobody else has to do it. But more important than that, I practice not putting off something. And it reminds me every time I do it, 20 years later, I don't want to procrastinate. And so I'm much less of a procrastinator. So things like that I do with my clients. Each has their own little exercise or thing to practice, but
Yeah.
practice is a big part of this.
Yeah, this is a great. So I have like an opposite example, because one of the things that I used to do, and I realized this on my son's 4th birthday, is that I would prioritize all of the things, cleaning the dishes, making the dinner, over my relationship with the people. And so I got to the end of my son's 4th birthday, and I was getting ready for bed, and I was like, I don't have a single memorable moment from today. But I cleaned up all the pizza, and I made the cake, which took like 3 hours, and I went and got the balloons, and I did all the things. Like, if I was
Ah,
looking at how productive I was super productive, but I didn't nothing was meaningful in that. And so I'm on the flip side where I'm like, I need to let go of some of those things for meaningful things. And I did it. So proud of myself the other day because you have to practice. But my husband was leaving to go to work, and I noticed that there was like all the shoes at the door, right? And people are tripping over them and stuff. And so like he left, and I closed the door, and I like immediately started putting these shoes away. And I was like, this isn't what I want to be doing right now. And I opened the door, and I stood in the doorway, and I waved him goodbye, which like literally takes, I don't know, 30 seconds, not even a minute, I don't think. And then I put the shoes away. And so it's this, we've said this a whole bunch of times, everybody is different, but these are the things, like for me, what I want to change is I want to stop deprioritizing what's not important over what is important. And I have to practice doing that. And it might seem like it should be simple, right? It should be simple to be like, well, you want to work on your human relationships, so of course you would choose that. But man, I got a hard like clean up right now streak. And I've had to like let the dishes sit in the sink for 3 passes before I do something with it. It again, and none of these are like right or wrong things. It's just like, what are those things that you want to do? What are those things you want to have for your life that you want to change, and make the choice? I love this book title, Embrace the Possible, right? What could your life look like if it was more purposeful? And today you might have tuned into this episode because you're like, well, I don't. I would like to have purpose in my life, but I'm just on the rat race of doing things, and I want to start. I don't want that. This is something you can choose instead. One of the recommendations I would give is make time for yourself to explore. What are you passionate about? What makes you feel a sense of purpose? I like to call it what makes me feel like I'm making my contribution instead of a contribution. And Pete, kind of as a last wrap up, what are some other things that if people find themselves and they're like, I feel like I don't have purpose today, but I really want purpose in my life, what's a good first step for them?
I think what you
Talk
just
to
said.
Pete.
What's that?
Talk to Pete.
Sure, give me a call. Just stop, breathe, think, find somebody to talk to, whether it's a coach or a counselor or a close friend that you really trust, family member, and be open to exploration, and just take a look. Read. There's all kinds of books about it. And what I like to do with my coaching clients, because we all have examples of times we showed strength about change and taking on new things, and then we forget about it. So it's good to remind yourself, and I remind my clients, the discipline that they showed once upon a time to practice something, to overcome something, to commit to something, and then they forget about it. Use that to say, I've done it before. See, that silly little example about the kitchen sink, I can remind myself not only to clean the dishes, that's the small part of it, but I can take on things. I can change habits. That's another thing we're talking about. How do you change habits? And I can remind myself, like when I stopped smoking 35 years ago, that's a big one for me, how I did it. And I remind myself, I took on a very difficult problem, and through my thinking it through and changing, I changed it. So I can take on anything. That's what I like to remind my clients. Look at what you've done already, because you've gotten to this point, handling things, doing things, contributing to the world. Now you sort it out. Just take an inventory and decide how you want to go from here. But you can change because you've changed before.
Yeah, so true. When you said resilience, it made me think of Robert, who's in the chat, because he's always talking about resilience. But he shared this great example. I think that the challenge is to practice the changes in ourselves and not try to change others. My wife bought me a t-shirt that says, I'm not a control freak, but I can show you how to do that the right way. Oh my gosh, this is such a great example too, because I have a son who's 5. And like I talk, and my narrative all the time is about there's lots of ways to do things. And if people want to draw things one way and you want to draw things differently, that's okay. But then we had this like craft a day advent calendar at Christmas time. And I was telling him he had to do it the way that was on the directions. And we got to this one and we had extra googly eyes. It was like finger puppets. And there were extra googly eyes. And he wanted to put 5 eyes on the penguin. And my whole self is like, penguins don't have 5 eyes. I let him put the 5 eyes on the penguin. And it's the cutest little penguin. And it's unique. And I love uniqueness and authenticity. And I was like, oh man, my like need to have it done right actually is distracting me from some of the things that I believe are more important than that. And so it's interesting because even in those little moments, we can learn things about ourselves and we can decide, even if the decision and the practice is uncomfortable. That decision and practice was uncomfortable for me. I was uncomfortable watching him put every eye on that penguin. And at the end, I was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm alive. Nothing bad happened. This penguin has 5 eyes. It's maybe, I love little examples like that because those are the things that we can probably find in our day to show us like, hey, I did do that and I can do it again. I just need to keep practicing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, we went long because that's what we do on this show. Pete, where can people find you if they'd like to have a conversation with you or learn some more about your work in purpose?
Sure. That's great. I have a website. It's kind of long, but it says what it is. It's Breakthrough is the name of my practice. Breakthrough Career and Life Coaching. So the website is breakthroughwithcoachpete.com. All one word, breakthroughwithcoachpete.com. And I have a phone number you'll see on there. I offer free coaching consultation to anyone who thinks they might be interested in coaching. I don't limit it to 15 minutes. We talk, I answer any questions, we talk, and we see if coaching with Coach Pete is right for that person. And, you know, I don't have a niche. I don't even like that word. I don't have a niche. I work from.
I'm Canadian, so it's niche.
Niche. Okay. My son was just up in Canada last week. Had a great time. Yeah, I work with men. I work with women. I love working with both, either, and ages, let's say 20 to 70 plus. Even I had a lot of experience working with teenagers too, so I'd be open to that too. But it's typically 20 to 70 plus. Any walk of life. It's usually people who are going through some. You know, life is filled with ages and stages, and every age and stage brings or can bring challenges, and sometimes we get stuck in those challenges. So a coach can help get unstuck. It can help find the possibility and the opportunity, which we lose sight of. And so the best way is to go to my website. I don't think it'll be doing any good for me to give you my phone number because you won't be able to see it. But
no. But also, Pete is tagged in this post on LinkedIn. So if you click on his name, you can find his page and you can find his website and find all of the contact info.
I also have a book called "Get Out of Your Own Way and Get On with It."
Yes.
Which is a lot about.
I
have it here. Get out of your own way and get on with it. And it's about my coaching, my philosophy, some of the things we talked about today. And I'd be happy to. It's on Amazon, or if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'd be happy to send them a book.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Pete. And before we head off, because Cecilia, hello, I haven't seen you forever, so I'm reading your message. Having a disabled child has been teaching me so much about how control versus just enjoy the good is so different. And there are just like, I feel like that's why I love conversations. I feel like we can learn from everyone. And whether they are a small child or a senior or anywhere in between, we can learn things, and we can learn things about ourselves through conversation with other people. And so on that note, if your conversation you're being called into is one of purpose, then make sure that you are connected to me, to Pete, and to all of the other wonderful people who are in the chat today, because these are the people having conversations about purpose, and it creates space and opportunity to you find more of your own. So with that, we will call it a day. And until next time, folks, permission to do you.